Today I finally stopped waiting. The sun was shining through the stained glass windows of the Sinclair family's new dining room, and my boyfriend's mother was handing the keys to our house to another woman. The housewarming banquet had been planned for weeks. Gavin Sinclair, my boyfriend of 7 years, the man I had waited for through every broken promise and delayed timeline, had told me this party would be different. "This is the moment everything changes," he said, his hand warm on my shoulder. "We'll announce our engagement. We'll move into the house together. Everything you've been waiting for is finally here." I had believed him, Dad. I had believed him when he said the project payout was coming soon and we just needed to wait a little longer. I had believed him when he said his sister needed to graduate before he could think about marriage and I should just wait a little longer. I had believed him when he said his mother needed time to adjust to the idea of us and I should just wait a little longer. I had been waiting for 7 years. 7 years of patience, of understanding, of being the cool girlfriend who never made demands and never issued ultimatums. I had sold my mother's heirloom gold jewelry, a set of dragon and phoenix bracelets that had been in my family for 4 generations, to help him scrape together the down payment for this house. $45,000, every penny of my inheritance, poured into a home that was supposed to be ours. The house was beautiful. IT was a Victorian brownstone in the old part of the city, with bay windows and original crown molding and a garden that I had already planned out in my mind. I had chosen the pink colors for the living room, that I had measured the kitchen for cabinets. I had imagined 1,000 times what it would feel like to turn the key in the lock and walk into a space that was finally, truly ours. And now his mother was giving those keys to Serena Chin. Serena was Gavin's childhood friend, the daughter of his mother's closest social circle, the girl who had been sent to Europe for finishing and had returned with an accent that came and went depending on who was listening. She had been at every Sinclair family gathering for the past year. She had a way of standing just a little too close to Gavin, of laughing just a little too hard at his jokes, of looking at me with an expression that was perfectly polite and perfectly predatory at the same time. "She just got back from Europe, and she needs a place to stay," Mrs. Sinclair announced, pressing the keys into Serena's manicure hand. The red ribbon tied around them, the ribbon I had chosen, the one that matched the front door, gleamed in the afternoon light. "Let her stay there for now. It's not a big deal." The dining room went very quiet. 30 guests, Gavin's family, his colleagues, his friends, all turned to look at me, waiting to see what I would do. Waiting to see if the doormat girlfriend would finally, after 7 years, push back. Serena dangled the keys from her finger, her smile glittering. "I won't touch the master bedroom. You don't mind, do you, Audrey?" I set down my fork. The sound it made against the porcelain plate was sharp and deliberate, a punctuation mark in the silence. "Why would I mind?" I said, my voice calm. "It's just a house." Gavin's shoulders sagged with relief. "That's my girl. I knew you'd understand. The deed doesn't matter, Audrey. What matters is us. Our relationship is stronger than any piece of paper." Serena winked at me, the keys still swinging from her finger. "Thanks for being so understanding. It's so rare to find a woman who's truly secure in herself." I smiled. It was not a warm smile. "You're welcome, Serena. I hope you enjoy the house. I really do." My phone buzzed against the tablecloth as I glanced down. The message on the screen was from Margaret Banston, my attorney, a woman I had hired 3 months ago, after I found the first evidence that Gavin had been lying to me for years. The message read, * premarital asset evidence compilation complete. Evidence preservation hearing scheduled for tomorrow, 9 a.m. The house deed, the bank transfer records, and the testimony from your grandmother's estate executor are all prepared. We're ready to proceed. *. I looked up from my phone. Gavin was beaming at me across the table, his hand reaching for mine. Serena was still playing with the keys, her expression smug, Mrs. Sinclair was already talking about which furniture Serena should buy for the living room I had designed, the living room I had paid for. "Everything okay?" Gavin asked, his voice carrying that particular condescending warmth I had come to recognize as his primary mode of communication with me. "Who's texting you?" "It's nothing," I said, slipping my phone back into my purse. "Just a work thing." "Always working." He shook his head fondly. "You need to learn to relax, babe. Enjoy the moment. We're finally here." I looked around the dining room. A.T. the guests who had watched me be humiliated and said nothing. A.T. the mother-in-law who had spent 7 years treating me like a placeholder. At the woman who was about to move into my house. At the man who had told me over and over that the most important thing was our love, and had proven over and over that his definition of love did not include respect. "You're right, Gavin," I said. "We're finally here. And I'm ready to start the next chapter." He didn't ask what that meant. He was already turning back to Serena, his attention sliding away from me like water off stone. And I was already composing my reply to the attorney. Proceed as planned. The first time Gavin said, just wait a little longer, I was 23 years old. We had been dating for 2 years. I had graduated from college, started my first job, and was living in a tiny studio apartment with a leaky faucet and a view of a brick wall. Gavin was working at his father's investment firm, a position he had gotten through family connections rather than merit. He talked constantly about the future, the house we would buy, the children we would have, the life we would build together. I just need to close this one project, he said, his hands cupping my face. The payout will be huge. That will be able to afford a down payment on something really special. Just wait a little longer, okay? I waited. The project closed. The payout was disappointing. There were unexpected expenses. We needed to adjust our timeline. I kept waiting. The second time he said it, I was 25. His sister Emily was finishing her master's degree, and Gavin told me that his parents wanted him to focus on family obligations before we got engaged. Once Emily graduates, we can announce our engagement, he promised. Just wait a little longer. What's one more year? Emily graduated. We didn't get engaged. Gavin told me his mother was old-fashioned and needed more time to come around. He told me that pushing too hard would damage the family dynamic. He told me that if I really loved him, I would understand. I understood, and I understood that I was not a priority. I understood that his mother would never come around. I understood that every wait a little longer was a test, and every time I passed, the test got harder. But I loved him, or I thought I did. Or I had spent so many years waiting for him that I had forgotten what it felt like not to wait. Then came the house, the beautiful Victorian brownstone that I had found, that I had loved, that I had convinced Gavin we should buy. His credit was better than mine, so the mortgage was in his name, but the down payment, the $45,000 that made the purchase possible, came from my grandmother. She had left me the dragon and phoenix bracelets when she died, along with a letter that said, asterisk, use these for something that matters. Use them to build a home. Asterisk. I sold the bracelets. I gave Gavin every penny, and I told myself that this was the last time I would wait, that this was the moment everything would change. It was the last time I would wait, but not the way I had imagined. The housewarming banquet was on a Sunday. The evidence preservation hearing was on Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, Gavin Sinclair had received a certified letter from my attorney informing him that legal proceedings had been initiated to recover my premarital financial contributions to the property. The letter included a detailed accounting of every dollar I had contributed, the $45,000 from my grandmother's jewelry, plus an additional $12,000 in renovation costs, plus the documented value of the labor I had invested in designing and furnishing the home. The total claim, including interest and damages, was just over $93,000. Gavin called me within 10 minutes of receiving the letter. His voice was a mixture of fury and disbelief. Audrey, what the hell is this? A lawsuit? You're suing me? I'm recovering my assets. There's a difference. The house is in your name, but the down payment came from my grandmother's jewelry. I have receipts, that I have bank statements. I have the original auction record from the jeweler who bought the bracelets. You have 30 days to return the funds, or the case proceeds to court. You said you didn't care. You said it was just a house. I said a lot of things, Gavin. So did you. Just wait a little longer. The project payout is coming soon. What matters is our love, not the deed. You are right about one thing. What matters isn't the deed. What matters is the fact that I spent 7 years waiting for a man who never intended to keep a single promise he made to me. A lawsuit, Audrey? After 7 years together? This is how you want to end things. I almost laughed. Gavin, things ended the moment your mother handed those keys to Serena. I just waited until the paperwork was ready before I said so. He sputtered. He raged. He told me I was being vindictive, unreasonable, cruel. And then, when the anger ran out, his voice shifted, became softer, became the voice of the man I had fallen in love with. Audrey, please don't, let's talk about this. Let's work it out. We can fix this. No, Gavin. I spent 7 years waiting for you to fix things. Now it's my turn. I hung up. My phone buzzed again almost immediately. A text from Serena. Asterisk, what did you do? Gavin is freaking out. This is so unnecessary. Can't you just let it go? It's not about the money. Asterisk. I didn't reply. She was right. IT wasn't about the money. IT was about the 7 years I had spent being invisible. IT was about the house I had designed and paid for and been shut out of. It was about the way Gavin had looked at me across the dinner table and told me the most important thing was our love, while his mother gave our keys to another woman. It was about the dragon and phoenix bracelets my grandmother had worn on her wedding day, melted down and sold to fund a man's empty promises. The money was just the mechanism. The real payment was something Gavin Sinclair had owed me for 7 years. And I was finally collecting. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Gavin's family hired a lawyer, a harried-looking man who sent a series of increasingly desperate letters attempting to negotiate a settlement. I refused every offer. I didn't want a settlement. I wanted documentation, that I wanted a court record. I wanted Gavin Sinclair's name associated with a legal finding that he had accepted premarital assets under false pretenses and had attempted to retain them after the relationship ended. The hearing was held in a small courtroom downtown. Gavin was there, looking diminished in an ill-fitting suit. His mother was beside him, her face pinched and furious. Serena was not present. She had moved out of the house 2 weeks after the lawsuit was filed, apparently unwilling to live in a property that was the subject of active litigation. The judge read through the evidence, the bank transfer records, the auction receipt from the jeweler, the text messages in which Gavin had acknowledged the contribution and promised to pay it back when things settled. She looked up at Gavin with an expression that was not quite contempt, but was certainly not sympathy. Mr. Sinclair, the evidence is clear. You accepted $45,000 from the plaintiff under the understanding that the property would be a shared marital home. You then granted exclusive occupancy to a third party without the plaintiff's consent. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff in the amount of $93,000, representing the original contribution plus interest and legal fees. Judgment is entered. The gavel fell. Gavin's mother let out a strangled cry. Gavin sat frozen in his chair, his face pale. And I stood up, gathered my documents, and walked out of the courtroom into the bright winter sunlight. Third-party objective commentary by Margaret Vanstjen, attorney at law. In 35 years of practicing family law, I have seen countless clients wait too long to act. They wait for the partner who will never change. They wait for the proposal that will never come. They wait for the recognition that they're being taken advantage of, and by the time they finally see it, their legal options have narrowed to nothing. What distinguishes Audrey Chen from the typical victim of prolonged relationship fraud is the extraordinary precision of her documentation. She preserved bank records from 7 years ago. She kept the original auction receipt from her grandmother's jewelry sale. She maintained a chronological record of every promise Gavin Sinclair made and every timeline he failed to meet. When she walked into my office, she was not carrying a broken heart. She was carrying a legal case. The just wait a little longer refrain is a recognized psychological manipulation tactic. Each delay normalizes the next. Each broken promise becomes the foundation for a new promise, equally empty. By the time the victim realizes the pattern, years of their life have been invested in a relationship that was never a partnership at all. Audrey's decision to stop waiting was not an emotional one. She did not act in the heat of the housewarming humiliation. She had hired me 3 months before that dinner. She was simply gathering the final piece of evidence she needed. The housewarming scene itself is a masterwork of controlled response. She knew Gavin's mother was going to give the keys to Serena. She had anticipated it. The dinner was a test, and she allowed it to play out exactly as expected, not because she was passive, but because she was documenting every moment. Her response to Serena's provocation was the perfect preparation for her legal counterstrike. She had already accepted that the house was lost. What she wanted was a record of how it was taken. Gavin paid the judgment. The house was sold. He couldn't afford to keep it without the money he had taken from me, and the proceeds went to creditors. Serena disappeared from the Sinclair family's social circle and resurfaced months later in Los Angeles, reportedly dating a tech executive. Gavin's mother stopped posting about her perfect son on social media. I used the money to establish a scholarship fund in my grandmother's name. The Eleanor Chen Memorial Scholarship provides grants to first-generation college students, the kind of students my grandmother, who had taught herself to read as an adult, who had built a small jewelry business from nothing, who had saved every penny to give her granddaughter a better life, would have been proud to support. I am 31 years old. I am not married. I am not waiting for anyone. The woman who waited 7 years for a man who never intended to keep his promises has become the woman who never waits for anyone again. The house keys that were given to another woman have been returned, but I have no interest in them. I have my own keys now, to my own apartment, in my own name, paid for with my own money. And when I turn the lock and walk inside, the space is mine. Every inch of it